blood was banned in the WWF, and two guys bled that night, and it was Bret Hart and Ric Flair, but I think only one of you got in trouble. What was the story there, Bret, as you remember it?
He wrestled Roddy Piper there.
That's right.
All I can say about that, I think, is that it was just a matter of placement on the card, probably. You know, we just haven't, I don't think anyone talked about it. I think it was something we kept pretty close vest about it in our match, and I think that Randy and Rick did the same. Just we were out there first. That's all there really is to that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I didn't get in trouble, but he just pulled me into the side, and because Macho, you know, said, "You get some juice from me." I said, "Yeah." I mean, what the hell, you know? It's Randy Savage. I don't care.
Right.
And nobody said don't, so it isn't like. But I didn't ask, and I'm walking down the hall, you know, thinking I had a pretty good match with Randy, and. You know, as you know, Bret, at that time, the tension with Randy and Liz was at all-time high. That was one of the hardest weeks I've ever been through because I had to go to Tampa and practice, and I'm not used to doing that, and practice all week long. And, you know, Randy had to have it written down and scripted, you know, which is okay. But he and Liz were barely talking at that. As a matter of fact, that's the last time they performed together. And so I thought we had a pretty good match. It was far from great, but it was a pretty good match. And I'm walking down the hall, and Vince Patterson came and got me and said, "Vince, I want to talk to you." And I thought he was going to say, "Good job, man. You know, sorry for all the tension." He looked at me and said, every time you get this close to greatness, you do something to screw it up." And I said, "Look, what did I tell him?" I said, "Who told you who told you to cut yourself?" And I said, "I don't know. I just did it on my own." He said, "Well, that's what I'm talking about. You don't do that without letting me know." Not thank you, nothing.
Wow.
See you when I see you, Rick. TV tomorrow. Don't be late. That was it.
That was kind of the. Well, I kind of knew that was what it was. So, you know, I did my best anyway to make it look like an accident. And I think. For the most part, I think they believed me, and I think even they watched it back, they weren't sure whether it happened or not, or what happened. Yeah, I don't know. I always my memory of it was that maybe it was just bullshit at the time. Was that Rick and Randy got fined for it, and me and Roddy, they never said a word to us about it.
No, I didn't get fined. He knows how to get to me by saying something that hurts my feelings, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the fine would be nothing to me, but Vince has got a way of, you know, because he's such a, and as you know, Bret, he anything that Vince McMahon asks you to do, pretty much he'll do himself. And he lives by that, and he, you know, to me, he's always been very fair, but he wants the heads up, you know, and I can remember. He's not shy about telling him. And you know, I came out of the ring one night, and he goes, "80s heels don't draw anymore. What are you doing?" You know, this is in 2003, talking about me being an 80s heel. I don't know what do you mean? What's changed in time here? So, you know, to kind of be a good guy and a bad guy, but he'll just go off on me for one, you know. Another time he said, "Where'd you learn that slam off the top rope?" And I said, "From Harley Race." He said, "Oh, just get out of my office now." Bret calls it the Beal off the top rope. Bret says, "Why do you take that Beal all the time?" I said, "I don't take a Beal." He said, "Yeah, you do, off the top rope." Well, I called it a slam. Bret called it a Beal. I didn't know what he was talking about. Oh, man, we've had so much fun.
We've got the greatest in here right now. We've got Bret the Hitman Hart on the line with us here on Woo Nation at Play.it. And I guess we should just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. In years past, Bret, you've been critical of some of Rick's matches, and I realize everybody's getting along these days, so I don't really want to stir it up, so to speak. But how do you think you guys' philosophies differ towards wrestling, or what makes a good match, and how did you guys just see things differently through the years?
And you can say whatever you want to say, and we'll still be text buddies.
Is a little bit taken out of context, I think, a little bit. What I would say is that we just have sort of just overlapping eras. You know, his era and my era just are very close. I mean, I was a guy that, like he said, when he was talking about Randy, I could always go in the ring and call a match out there. I didn't need to even plan anything, like zero. I'd go out and do an hour match with Rick. I don't think without ever talking to him before we went out. And I could do that with Rick at any given time. At the same time, I was also part of the Dynamite Kid and a different generation that was going a lot faster and doing a lot more sort of intricate new high spots that weren't sort of the same ones that, because there was a period of time, through the Dory Funk era and even the Harley era, a lot of guys just worked like them. A lot of them, people that just took the same bumps, the same style, that basically had the same match Harley had before he went out. And that was just a style that everyone picked up. It was a good, safe style, but it was, when I thought in the 80s, early 80s, that in Calgary, that we started being a little more creative with actual working, where it was a little stiffer, a little more believable. Dynamite was an incredible wrestler that long before he ever got to WWE, the stuff he was doing here in Calgary was ahead of its time. And so I learned from some good guys a little more of a different style, which I think, I didn't have the pleasure of working with just American wrestlers. Like, say, Rick worked with a lot of American guys, the best workers in the States, where I worked with guys in England and worked with Japanese guys and Puerto Ricans and a lot of different styles and stuff like that. And I just think that when my time came, after Rick's time was sort of still wrestling, the way they call it in there. They figure it out on the fly, and that's what makes that's the genius of those days. And I knew that from Harley, and I actually started as that era was changing a little bit. And I think, I don't know, maybe I was a pioneer or something with Dynamite and some of these guys that started taking wrestling in a little bit of a different direction and picking up the speed. And, I always say that when the Bulldogs came to the WWE, for example, in 84, I think it was, or 85, everybody started working harder, and that's just the way the style changed. And I think the business got better after that. I think it just was the natural, path that the wrestling was going to take, and wrestling kind of upped a little bit after in the 80s. And I'm sure Rick's got his own thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm the first to admit, when you wrestle an hour every night, which I did for 10 years, you get into a routine, and you hope that the guy you're working with is just a little bit over. Because sometimes if it's not, it could be a long hour.
Well, in fairness, too, a lot of that, when you were doing those hour matches, weren't on cable every week. So it's not like the same people are seeing the same match every week.
No, but
you do it in Greensboro.
The boys are seeing it.
Right.
And I think that I'm the first to admit. But I didn't have the blessing of a Ricky Steamboat or a Barry Windham every night. You know what I mean? And Harley would let me lead the match, but I wrestled Harley's match. Dory would let me lead the match, after a while, but I wrestled Dory's match. Terry Funk, he'd let me lead after a while when he was comfortable, but I wrestled Terry's match. Terry, of course, became so innovative in his own style. I mean, I bet you feel the same way, Brett. Terry Funk and Dick Murdoch were way ahead of their time, man, where they could be such serious technical guys. But Murdoch could make people laugh, too, way before anybody else could. I mean, he'd take a bump over the top rope in St. Louis when nobody was doing anything and walk into the turnbuckle and knock himself out. I mean, nobody did that. I think in Murdoch, at the same time, Murdoch could get in the ring, and technically, there weren't too many guys as good as Dick Murdoch. Would you agree, Brett?
Oh, he was a real pro.
Jesus.
He was one of those kind of guys that you'd love. You loved him in the ring, and you loved him out of the ring. He was a hilarious character outside the ring.
Oh, tremendous to be with.
Very funny. Had a dry sense of humor. Sarcastic. He was a very funny. You could have followed him around all day and always had a laugh with him.
Yeah, I did for 3 years. And then I got rid of him when he came to the Carolinas, the redneck. But he was, God, I tell you. Murdoch, he had his style too, but everything he did